Welcome to the fastest daf in town. Today we'll Masechtas Avodah Zarah daf Nun Ches. We are going to begin on Nun Zayin Amud Beis, about 8 lines from the bottom. Hahu Uvda. So we had the following episode, the Habi b'Mechuza, that happened in this location. Also Avi Kachavim. So you had an Avi Kachavim that went, and Ayel Chanusa di Israel. He went into a Jewish person's store. Amulhu Isachu Chamru Zvuni. Do you have wine to sell? So lo, he said no. And of course he had wine, but he didn't want to involve selling it to him. So Havi Yosef Chamra B'Davla. It turned out that there was some wine sitting in a pitcher, and Shadi Bey Yadei Shichshuch Bey. So he stuck his hand in it and started swishing the wine all over the place with his hand. Armulhu Hailav Chamrahu. And of course, this is like almost like a rhetorical question. Well, this is not wine. It's better believe it's wine. So because of that, shakle heich berische. So the Jewish owner threw it in anger into a barrel, and he didn't drink from it. But the question is, what is in shadu ladan? And he threw into a barrel. So the question is, what's the status now? Because you have an akum that touched wine. So Shari Rava was Zvuni Lokachavim. So he actually allows him to be able to sell it, which means it's mutter b'hana. So this is within the whole sugya of maga b'kavana, that he touched it with intention, but his intention was not for it to become yain nesach. So that's the reason why it's mutter, since the non-Jew had no intentions for nisuch. However, if Lekaleha Rav Huna bar Chinna, Rav Huna bar Rav Nachman, so they actually disagree, or I should say, they weren't there in order to be able to give rebuke or to be able to disagree, but this is the reality that Nafki Shipuri the Rabba Bishari, the Nafki Shipuri the Rav Huna bar Chinna, Rav Huna bar Rav Nachman v'Asri. So again, there's this dispute what the status is of this. As we continue in Chesed Aleph, Ikar Rav Huna bar Rav Nachman l'Mechuza. So when he got to that place, the Rashi says, Liachar Zman, this is obviously after some time, Achar Shechazerbo, after Rava retracted that it was Aser, Armulei Rava Rav Elokim, Shami Taroik, he said to his servants to close the door. It says Rashi, Sigar Hadelet, close the door, Shemisyare Marav Huna, because he was actually afraid of Rav Huna. Shelo yikpechenhu behilchos al divrei machlokaisim. Basically, he didn't want to get involved in the machlokes, so he said, close the door. Do nisu inshi denitrid. So he doesn't want to get involved. So al gabe, but he was able to get in. Rav Huna was able to get in, even though he wanted the door shut. Amalei ki gav namai. So he said, what's the din in this case? Amalei aser. Afil b'hana. So he says that not only is this wine aser, it's even afil b'hana. He can't even sell it. I b'hamar hudiyamer shichshach eno yisei yain nesach. We heard that Rava said that that even if you swish wine around, it's not yain nesach, because his intention, and Rashi says, Aser af bahana shechazerbo, because he retracted. So he said, we know that you are allowed to sell to an Ovi Kachavim. So Amdi Amriya na Lavar. When did I say this? Lavar. Lavar midemei dahu chamra. Demei lahu chamra miamri. So I was referring to the value of the pitcher of the wine. The value of the wine is aser. Says Rashi, Dahavi b'davla. When I was referring to the pitcher, miamrinan moidinale tetzarchel hoylech damim liyamamelech. Certainly, everything else has to be thrown its value into the sea. Demei shar hayayin shechavius mutter. But the value of the other wine in the barrel is mutter. Basically, you have to get rid of the value of the wine that was touched. Okay, so Omer Rava Kiyasa Pumbedisa. when this Maisa went in front of Rav Hun, this whole Maisa, so Ikvan Nachmeni, Abaye was surrounded regarding all these different sugyas of Shmaisa Masnisa, the Aser. He basically said that all the wine is Aser. So Shemaisa dehu uvda dehavimun Narda, regarding the story in Narda, the Aser Shmuel B'Tveria, and Shmuel asered it even Bahana in Tveria. But Aser Rav Yochanan v'Yermela Lafi she'enu b'nei Torah. So maybe the only reason why he asered it over there because they're not b'nei Torah, so he went strict. Yermele Tveria v'Narda enu b'nei Torah. Some say it was actually both of the places, Narda and Tveria. There's not b'nei Torah. The mechuzah b'nei Torah. Well, you tell me what in the mechuzah they are b'nei Torah. So why would you be any more lenient there? Masnisa. So what is this masnisa in support? So regarding the ag radmim, if you have, let's say, a superintendent of wine, says Rashi, Adam hamamuna lishmar hamidais, someone who is in charge of watching over the measurements based on the king, that no one's going to lie. V'tayim hayayin, his job is to taste wine. V'nasa sirsir b'neim, he's like a middleman. So you have this guy, she kadach minkas, he basically puts a hole in the barrel, says Rashi, shenakav es megufas achavias, and he ends up like putting some type of a straw, who kane chol, like a straw, or a reed, which is perfect, which is a hole in it, so that he'll be able to bring wine up through it. And he that's what he did. Oshetayim in a kais, he tasted a little bit of wine in the cup, and then the Avi Chachamim threw the rest of it back into a barrel. So this actually happened, and they astered it. So apparently, says Rashi, below kavanas nisoch havi hai maga. He did touch it, but he didn't actually. He touched it b'kavana, but his intention was not for it to become yain nesach. Nonetheless, it's asbahana. For instance, no, lo b'shtia. Maybe it's only aser b'shtia, but mutter b'hana. So since it was a case of maga b'kavana, he touched it with kavana, he intentionally touched the wine, although it wasn't with the intention for nisach. So yihachi lisnei yimchor keditani seifa. It should say the language of yimchor, says Rashi, ki hei keditani seifa. Therefore, it would show whether it's mutter or aser b'hana. It's nothing to do with shtia. It would show not that just it's aser b'shtia, but it's even aser b'hana. After all, yihachi lisni yimchor keditani seifa. What does it say over there? By cherim u'mikachavim, you have this. Rashi says meshuga ubal marivos, someone who's like an ADHD, if you will, type of deal, if I could say that on the tape. Umamahir lasa shel b'kavana. He is very impulsive in his behavior. He sticks his hand into a barrel. He thought it was oil. He didn't even think it was wine. But nimsa shel yain, turned out to be wine. He says, in that case, you're allowed to sell it. Why? So tiyufta the rava tiyufta. So look at Rashi. Why are you allowed to sell this? Why is it mutter b'hana, this wine? The hoyel the savar shel shemen hoya leikel migzar shem nischaven l'nasech. Since it's not even that his intention was to touch wine, but not for it to become nesach, he thought it wasn't even wine. All he did was think it was oil. Avol kadech b'menikus. If, let's say, again, he stuck a reed in the barrel, then he spit some wine went in, some went out, right? So he touched it, or he shook the wine, knowing it was wine. Then chashin and shem nisach lavodas kachavim. So therefore, l'maskana, it could really be aser b'hana. Maybe it's only mutter b'hana where he doesn't even realize that it's wine. But if he knows that it's wine, even though his intention was not for it to become yain nesach, then it would be even aser b'hana. Question 7. He was like shaking up the wine. He goes, is this wine? Right? So he said, my pasag rava bedin zeh Demaga akum shlo b'kavan l'shtia v'hana u'me'eza masnisa masak tiyufta derava lafika chazer bay. So originally, Rava thought that it's usher to drink, but it's mutter b'hana. However, this brisa demonstrates clearly that this akum who sticks straw in, or he drinks some and he throws the rest back, in that case, since he knew it was wine, it will be asur b'hana. And again, because we see in the Seifa where the guy didn't know it was wine, since he didn't know it was wine, so therefore not geyser. However, if he did know it would be wine, it would be geyser, and it would be even asur b'hana. Okay, let's see if there's a question here. Okay, let's keep on going. So tiyufta the Rav tiyufta. Rav Yochanan ben Arzav, Rav Yosi ben Nehoroi, Rav Yasvi, they're sitting because shasu chamer, they're drinking wine. Also who gavra, there's some guy, maybe he was a Jewish guy, we'll have to see. So Amrulay, ta ashkinon, give us to drink, let me have some. Well, basar derumel, so they let him touch the wine, drink the wine. So labasar derumel lakasa, igali milsa b'kachavim, who? So they end up realizing that this guy actually was an Ovi Kachavim. So now the question is, what's the status of their wine? So Aser feel so what do you do? So Chad Aser feel Bahana. One said no, it's Aser Bahana because he knew it was wine apparently. The Chad Shari feel B'shtia. The other one said no, he didn't even realize it was wine when he touched it, and therefore it's Mutter B'shtia. So not only Mutter Bahana. So Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi Mandi Aser Shapra Aser Mandi Shari. The shari, shopper shari. One who says it was not allowed is a good answer. And one who says it's not allowed is also a good answer. So how can they both be right when they're polar opposites? So man de aser, one who says that, no, it's aser wise, we continue to nun chesed beis, because Meimer Amar, because the Akum thought, what would he say? Salka daita the Rabbanan kihani. These rabbis who are in such a high level, these great people, shechor kashasu, are they going to be drinking beer? No, beer is not a distinguished beverage for Rabbanan. So he knew it was wine, so therefore he touched it knowing that it was wine, and therefore, as we said, therefore it's asma hana. Elvadei haichamru, and therefore v'nasche, and therefore we say it's yain nesach. Mandashari shabashari. Remember, Omer, the Akim thinks Sagadai that the Rabbanan ki hani chamer kashasu. It's not possible that's wine. I know that a Yid, and especially a Chacham, is not going to allow me to touch wine. So he didn't realize that they didn't know if he was Jewish, right? But let's say that they thought that he was an Akum. There's no way he would let him touch the wine. Right? So why would he allow me, an idol worshiper, to drink? Rather, he thought it was in fact beer, and therefore that's the reason why it's mutter. Okay. Good. Weiter. So the Gemara says, I don't understand. But the Akim could see it. I don't understand. What's this whole question? Before he touched it, before he drank or whatever, he could see if it's wine or beer. So B'layla, either it was at night, he could have smelled it to tell the difference between wine and beer. So B'chadata, it was new. It says Rashi, Yain Chadash Ein Lo Reach. If we're dealing with new wine, it doesn't produce much of a fragrance. Benatla, says Rashi, Sagadaitach, Shahaya Shayev Hayayin Mechavius, that he poured the wine from the barrel, Bekli Shishmo Natla. He poured it into a cup. Uparich, the question is, Vahanagabe Bechamra Alide Natla. He touched it through the cup. Fine, let's say he didn't know it was wine. It still should be considered like he touched it without kavana, and therefore it should still be aser. So Zemar answers, so it should be aser to drink. So lo tzricha deka moirik or uki. That they poured it basically straight without him touching without him even touching the wine. It says Rashi, Shlo Yada Shu Yain. He didn't know it was wine. V'koichai shlo b'kavana lo gozer fil b'shtia. Even though it was koichai, he didn't do it himself. It wasn't direct, but nonetheless, and we're not gozer. V'havili koichai shlo b'kavana v'chol koichai shlo b'kavana lo gozer v'rabanan. Okay, so what does it mean koichai? So he didn't touch the wine, but he made it move as he poured it. So his force made it move. So in that case, we thought that maybe it's aser b'shtia, but only mutter b'hana. So he said it's no worse than maga shlo b'kavana, which is mutter b'hana. Okay. So boy minei Rav Yosim Rav Yochanan. So they asked the following question: Yayin she maschu oivei kachavim. Says Rashi, shemozgu. If let's say an akum diluted the wine, shenosin bo mayim l'stakta l'shtia. He poured water into the wine. Apparently, he didn't touch or anything. Mahu. So Amalei ve'ema mozgu. Why do you use this language of shemoschu? Use the language of meziga. So Amalei ana k'dechsiv kamina. Or I'm just following what the pasuk says. The pasuk says in Mishlei, Tavcha tivcha mascha yena af arka shulchana. Right, pretty famous pasuk, right? Maybe never heard of it until just this second. So I was just basically quoting the pasuk. It says mascha yena, which is the dilution of wine. So Malay lashon Torah la'atzma, lashon chachamim la'atzmai. So the lashon of the Torah is by itself, the lashon chachamim by itself. Okay. So what's the din? So Amalei aser. So the reality is that if you are diluting the wine, so you're not. It also makes it aser. Why? Mishum leich leich amrin nazir schar schar lekarmel sikrav. So it's basically gzeira that just like a nazir, we don't want him to drink wine. We don't even want him to come close to a vineyard. So too over here. So Rabbi Yirmiyah ikla l'safta. So Rabbi Yirmiyah went to this location. He saw that there was wine that the akum was diluting. The ishti Yisrael minei, and the yid started drinking. We basically said, no, he's wrong. He's not supposed to do that. Okay, and we're gonna stop there. But let's see a couple more questions. Let's start off with question 7. We saw again by this whole case of when he stuck his hand in there. So Rava initially thought that it's mutter bahana, but we ended up establishing that no. If you have kavana, if you know that this is wine, even though you don't have the kavana for nisuch, it's still aser bahana, and it's aser bahana, which is unlike what Rava initially said. Okay, fine. Question TA 10. Yain shenosin bo akum mayim. If you poured like diluted water, v'lo naga b'gufay, but yain, you didn't touch it. Madin hayayin umadua. So he said that it's mutter bahana. Dol odif minigia al yedei davar acher shel b'kavana. It's if, like, say you touch it without kavana, like for example, we said he was climbing up a tree and a branch hit it. So in that case, it's certainly going to be mutter bahana. However, it's aser b'shtia, you can't drink it because of leich leich amir, nazir, etc. Okay. Ayin Rashi on that. Question TB 12. Yain sheba mikoich akum b'loy shenuk. Exactly the same question. So this is what I wrote. This is Nun Chesamad Beis. This is TB 12. Umaskana barash b'seif parak. Hahevdel im yesh yodea la'akum shezeh yayin. Im hu yodea shezeh yayin aser. Aval b'maisa chachamim sheshaisim sheichar v'chayshev shezeh sheichar az mutar. That's not what we're looking for at all, which is pretty sad because I just got the answer before. It's the exact same question. So it's mutar b'hana, okay, because it's no different than alidei acher, right? Touching, it's not worse than alidei acher. You touch it with something else, but it's aser b'shtia because of lech, right? Does it even ask the question? Let me read the question. Yain sheba mikoich akum belongs to nagabo kagan this him aser dim naser b'shtia. Oh, is it aser in drinking? So maybe this is not so bad. So we say it's aser b'shtia mishum lech, and that is a situation where, and actually maybe my question, I didn't get it so wrong after all. In this case, this is through, let me just say, this is Meirik Aruki. Let me just sit over here. Okay. Maybe I was right all along. Adkan.